Well, Phil Steele joins us, and featuring Phil on the show, brought to you by the Cleveland Clinic, where you can call today for an appointment at 216-444-CARE. The one and only Phil Steele in the college football preview. Every time the baseball all-star break occurs now, traditionally, we have Phil come into the studio, and we know that the college football season is right around the corner. It is great to see you, old friend.
Well, thank you very much, Bruce. Pleasure being on again.
Let me start with conference realignment and doing my homework, anticipating your arrival today. I had to do a crash course because there's been so many rumors and so many switches. I had forgotten who switched to which conference.
Yeah, it does. If you look at the posts or the summer, the last couple of years, it looks like we're heading to those 4 16-team super conferences, and then it sort of dissipates. You know, I think with this new playoff format that we may see this slow down a little bit, because now that it's the best 4 teams out there, you don't have to be aligned with any one conference. I don't think there's going to be a rush to get into the 4 16-team super conferences. So we may just see conference alignment slow down a little bit.
Obviously, in the ACC, nobody this season, but in 2014, they're going to lose Pitt and Syracuse.
They get Pitt and Syracuse in, yeah, so they'll turn into a 14-team conference. I think it's a good addition for them. Basketball-wise, it's a good addition. Yeah. And I think Pitt and Syracuse are quality enough programs, and both are on the way up, that I think it's a good addition for the ACC.
The Big 12, TCU and West Virginia, goodbye to Missouri and Texas A&M that go to the Southeastern.
And I think talent-wise, it's about an even switch. I think Missouri and Texas A&M record-wise may not have been what TCU and West Virginia were, but talent-wise they were. And I think when you look at TCU and West Virginia this year, they are taking a step up. West Virginia's coming out of the Big East, which last year they barely won the Big East. They won 3 close games down the stretch. And TCU's coming out of the Mountain West. They're not taking on the Idahos of the world anymore. They're taking a big step up in level of competition. So I see both teams finishing about somewhere between 3 and 5 in the Big 12.
You know, there's other sports besides football and basketball in consideration when you come to the switching of conferences. But don't you agree that football more than basketball influences these universities?
Football mainly, yes. Clearly football. And there's no a team like West Virginia, for example, they're going to change their whole university. And Oliver Luck was saying it's going to cost them an extra $1 million in travel costs playing in the Big 12 than it is in the Big East. But it's football driven, and you can make a lot more money in football. Football is by far the king sport in college football.
Yeah, flying to Oklahoma State,
yes.
All these schools down there, absolutely. It's been a long time coming. I think it is a gigantic step in the right direction. I like the 4-team format. It's very close to what I originally suggested, Phil. Take play the bowl games if they had such a big village. Keep the tradition of the bowl games, and take the top 4 teams after the bowl games and play 2 more weeks. But it's the next best thing.
I'll tell you what, back in 2000 in the magazine, I wrote my forecast of what I thought was a perfect playoff system, and it was 4-team playoff, 1 against 4, 2 against 3. I've written about it in the magazine for 13 straight years, Bruce, and the exact format has come to fruition, so I'm thrilled. I think college football's regular season is by far the most important of any regular season, college or pro, any sport. College bowls are a tremendous thing for the universities, and it's a nice reward for the players to have. And I think by taking 1 against 4, 2 against 3, you keep the regular season intact. Those games in September, October, November are just as important as any game during the course of the year. You keep the bowls intact. And really, if the difference is number 5 fighting number 4 for that final spot, who cares? If number 5 says we have a legitimate claim to 1 or 2, I think it's only happened 2 of the last 12 years. So I think it is the perfect format, and we will have all the true teams that belong in the national championship chase in it.
And Dev, I was really worried about Delaney's influence because, as you know, Phil, he was pushing big time that originally that only conference champions deserve to be in this Final Four. And as we all know, the Southeastern Conference is in a class by itself. So be it if 2 of the 4 come out, or even in some years it'll be a rarity, but 3 out of the 4.
Right, and if it's all 4, let it be. It should be the top 4 teams. And I think last year proved that. Alabama, in my mind, was the best team in college football. With that defense, may have been one of the best defenses ever in college football, an emerging offense. They had blown out every opponent on the year. There were no close wins. Their closest win was by 17 points. Their only loss was to LSU. Oklahoma State had some narrow escapes during the course of the year, didn't have the defense to compare. We didn't have, in my mind, the schedule, and I thought the best 2 teams played for the national title last year. So clearly, forget the conference champions. Weigh it in your factors, but put the best 4 teams in the tournament.
And at the end of our featuring Phil here on the show today, we'll talk about his bold predictions as we do, as well as the Final 4 teams and then the Heisman watch. We'll save that to the end. But the bowl games are still going to be intact, even the ones that that are not going to be involving these 4 teams.
Absolutely, and I love it. I love bowl season. And the good thing about it is a nice reward for the players at the end of the year. They get to go to a nice bowl game. Teams end up winning at the end of the year as opposed to everybody losing in the loss. And I'll go back to the FCS playoffs. And the FCS playoffs, they had a 3-year stretch where they have the Colonial Conference, and the 3rd place team in one of the divisions in the Colonial Conference won the national championship 2 out of 3 years. It just becomes a battle of attrition when you get to 16 teams in the playoffs. Who remains the healthiest? I don't think the 3rd place team in a division in the Colonial Conference is a true national champ yet. That's what was the case 2 out of 3 years. So I think keeping it to 4, regular season intact, postseason intact, I think it's great for college football.
All right, let's get to it. I'm going to start with Phil with the independents, and that means Notre Dame. You think independent, you think of Notre Dame right off the get-go. You got Army, Navy, and BYU, who just became an independent. But let's start with Notre Dame. It's interesting that Kelly has not done, I know what you have anticipated from him so far. And last year, their schedule was more Irish-friendly than certainly this year. As a matter of fact, except for the Southeastern Conference beating up on one another, you could make a case that Notre Dame's got the toughest schedule in the country this year.
I rate it the toughest schedule in the magazine this year. When you look at Notre Dame, they're taking on bowl team after bowl team. In fact, only one of the teams that they face this year I do not project to get to a bowl, and that is Wake Forest. They have to play 2 of the top 5 teams in the country on the road in USC and Oklahoma, and they're going to be an underdog in a few games this year. With that said, I think expectations are low for Notre Dame. Some folks I've heard on ESPN are saying 6 wins for them this year. I think they'll overachieve upon that. I think they can top last year's 8-win total. I don't consider them a BCS contender. I don't know if they're going to get to a BCS bowl. Probably a 3-loss season. But I think it'll be a much improved Notre Dame team and one capable of 9 or 10 wins.
And I see they play Navy in Ireland to open up the season. And they play Miami of Florida in Chicago. I guess that's going to be in Soldier Field, huh?
Yeah, that's going to be at Soldier Field in Chicago, and I think Miami of Florida is in a rebuilding year, so that is a game where I expect them to win. The Navy game is tough because Purdue is loaded this year, and when you look at Purdue, I got to talk to their coach Hope, and he likes the fact that Notre Dame is in Ireland the week before the game, so Purdue's a much improved team. There's really no flat spots on their schedule. Wake Forest, the only team I don't expect to be in a bowl.
Navy's who Notre Dame opens up against, they're going to be a lot better than Army again, obviously?
Yes, Navy's going to be, well, no, I got Navy and Army are about the same this year.
No kidding.
Yeah, and I think Army actually has a shot at ending Navy's big win streak that they have in the series. I think, in fact, in the magazine, Notre Dame, BYU, Army, and Navy, I have all 4 of the independent teams making a bowl this year, and it would be the first time in history that all the independents made a bowl. But I'm cheating a little bit there because there used to be a lot more independents in college football, so the fact there's only 4 doesn't make it that huge of a statement. But I do think Army's a much improved team. Navy is a team that didn't get to a bowl last year but should get to a bowl. And BYU's a legitimate team that could win 8 or 9 games this year.
You think it was wise for them to go independent?
BYU, well, I don't think they had their choices. Sticking in the Mountain West, or I think they really want to be picked up by a BCS conference, and the odds are they will be. They're a quality enough program to get there.
I look at their schedule, and Notre Dame, Georgia Tech and Boise are the noteworthy games where they've got to make a statement.
And Utah as well. Utah's their rival. Last year, you look at that final score, I think Utah beat them something like 50-14, but it was mostly fueled by turnovers. But those are the 4 4 big games this year, and I think they steal 1 or 2 of those.
Before we get into the big conferences, next with Phil, we'll take a look at the MAC, the WAC, and the Mountain West. We return with the best in the Phil Steele, philsteele.com, and the college football preview book. It's out.